my presentation focuses on some of the developments that Evgeny partly already covered regarding the policy developments in EU, and I will cover some perspectives on the outlook on the carbon market altogether. But some of this presentation is partly overlapping what Evgeny already shared, but let's take a closer look and take it from there. Just very briefly, I introduced myself before we started, but I have a very different type of background, I guess, since I do not have this research background like most of you, but I have 20 years experience in the forest industry, and this is just, I tried to rather not go through all the different roles that I've had in the industry, but I've worked with many things, put it that way. I'm by education, I'm a forester, but I ended up working a lot with finance, business strategy, and governance and risk and so forth. So that's very briefly about myself. But I'm coming back to what Evgeny already touched upon, and it has to do why are we so keen about this carbon dioxide removal, and just to give you some context in terms of the scope. So like Evgeny explained, for us to reach this Paris Agreement 1.5 degree compared to the pre-industrial era, so that really requires massive emission reductions. But on top of that, we also need a lot of carbon dioxide removals. So through the emission reductions, we only get halfway. We really need to be able to ramp up the carbon removals in a grand scale. And just to give you an idea, so currently the estimate stands somewhere around 10 gigatons annually. Sort of, we are talking obviously global context, but in order to reach that Paris Agreement target for net zero by 2050, we need to be able to remove 10 gigatons of carbon on an annual basis. Currently, the level is roughly, say, 200 million tons in the voluntary carbon market. So there needs to be a massive ramp up, and that is, of course, the reason why EU, through its climate policy and with the certification framework that I will discuss shortly, so that's where it comes in. And I also want to highlight that, especially in the beginning of this timeline, the land use sector will play a very pivotal role, because it is the so-called BECCS and DUCs. So this is bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, and direct air carbon capture and storage. I mean, the technologies are still quite nascent, and the cost of building up that capacity will really take a lot of time. So in the beginning, the land use sector plays a very important role. So there's a long way to go, and I should also maybe add what Evgeny explained. What comes to the sort of drivers for the demand, it's not only the the corporate sustainability reporting directive, but many companies have already pledged to Science-Based Targets initiative to be sort of carbon neutral by 2050. And now many companies are step by step developing the transition plans, not only about the emission reductions, but also about carbon removals, because the updated Science-Based Targets initiative corporate net zero standard will require companies also to determine targets for carbon removals towards this end game target. And then maybe this is, Evgeny already covered quite a bit of this. So what currently is the situation? So there is a very limited supply of what is called high quality carbon removals. Now, this is the very same article that Evgeny referred to. And the biggest sort of flaw there was that most of these credits were so-called avoidance credits. RED+, which stands for emission reductions through from deforestation and avoidance of deforestation and degradation. So these are not active carbon removals, rather sort of avoidance credits that were considered to be pretty much greenwashing as what they actually are. So the policy response from the EU is the certification framework, the CRCF, can you mention that, which sets a very strict criteria for the carbon dioxide removals. And it is just that currently it's quite complex, and there's a very high cost of producing those credits. So that is also one of the reasons why the market liquidity has not yet developed too much. And maybe very important for Luke, and maybe I guess for all of us, is that one of the reasons also what is really a prerequisite for this market, this voluntary market carbon, to really take off, is that we need the sort of coherent carbon measurement and verification technologies so that we can ensure the compliance with the CRCF rules. And this is obviously that we are very much working with. And then this is now, if there's something that you, I hope that you can take away from this meeting, this is the carbon removal and carbon certification framework. So the quality criteria that the framework covers apply to all different type of carbon removal activities. And I already mentioned about the permanent or these technical carbon removals, so the BECCS and DUCs, partly also then biochar. So these involve basically permanent storage of the carbon for decades and so forth. Then we have another activity group, which is the carbon storage in products, which is mainly about wooden construction elements and storage of carbon in buildings. So that's also a temporary solution, because I mean you don't have these buildings up there for indefinitely. And also there this additionality applies. So regular wooden construction building doesn't qualify. You have to add something additional to it to make it to account it under this activity category. And then we have this carbon farming, which again is a temporary storage of carbon, which can be divided between sequestration and emission reductions. Emission reductions mainly from the peatland re-wetting and reduced fertilization, that is still being sort of looked into and not finalized. But then sequestration, that is agriculture and mineral soils carbon. Then it's the afforestation, agroforestry and improved forest management, which will come in the next phase. So I will come to that. And then maybe just a few words about these CDRs, carbon dioxide removals, because obviously there's been a long way to where we stand today. There are several different standards out there. You may recognize Verra and Gold Standard and so forth, which have been developing the different standards for voluntary carbon market and carbon removals. And now what we see is a bit of a convergence. So the different standards, they've been really sort of not integrated, not aligned. So there are certain standards that are quite different than from the other. But now we start to see this convergence of the different standards, and here is also where the EU's carbon removal and certification, carbon removal and carbon farming certification framework comes in, because it really sets the bar. And also I would assume, for example, Verra will have to sort of adjust and make sure that the methodologies and approach is in line with the CRCF. And again, you already covered, these are the quality criteria within this carbon, the CRCF. First of all, the quantification. So it needs to be accurate and reliable the measurement needs to be sufficient, and that's of course where the MRV technologies come in. And this additionality is really the key. Like Evgeny pointed out, nothing can be counted as sort of extra credit if it doesn't involve extra investment. That it can be a change in the forest management plan, it can be investing into specific technologies in the agriculture and farming, for example, but business as usual doesn't count. I mean, that's the baseline. Then you measure the difference compared to the baseline. So if you manage a forest like you always have, that is the baseline. Then you determine what can you achieve additional carbon sequestration in case of forest carbon through these extra measures, and that only counts. So that is really, really important. And then permanence, this is more relevant, or long-term storage, it's more relevant for those carbon dioxide removal activities that are intended to be permanent. So this criteria has placed less relevance than for the temporary carbon storage. And then also sustainability. So whatever projects are being carried out, the negative environmental, social and economic impacts must be avoided. On the other hand, there also can be so-called co-benefits. When you change a forest management plan or so, it may also increase, for example, the biodiversity. So therefore, this co-benefit is also widely discussed in the EU as well. And then finally, that all these carbon projects, they need to be validated and verified by a third-party certification and audit body. So that's what needs to happen. So now EU has expert groups working this year to determine the methodologies for re-wetting of peatlands, soil management and agroforestry, tree planting and forestation and biochar. These will take the form of delegated acts once finalized. So this is the sort of first phase, and this sustainable or improved forest management only comes in the next wave. So they will start working on the methodologies and certification standards next year. So, but again, here tree planting in form of afforestation is included in the first phase methodology development. I'll just move it manually. And this is the timeline. So coming back to this, so maybe one thing I just want to take out here is that, yeah, this EU registry. So the intention is that we would have a EU-wide CDR registry. Evgeny, you mentioned that, that is also, it's not exactly a marketplace, but it is this registry is needed so that anything that goes into the marketplace needs to be registered here. But EU is also very much sort of looking into the blockchain, NFT and tokenization possibilities to improve that market liquidity. And this, just to give you an idea of the scale. So this is a current estimate of the voluntary carbon market volume. And let's keep in mind that, here also, whatever was traded previously under this avoidance credits is also included. You also have renewable energy type of credits that, don't really qualify for the CDRs. So the starting point, and this even, I would say, is a bit of an optimistic evaluation of the current volume, because everybody's sort of been waiting for this regulatory sort of environment to be clear. So everybody's been holding back. The market liquidity is not there. Yet at the same time, we should be able to, this is the 2030. So from, I don't know, less than 200 to 1500. Yeah, so 1.5 billion tons. So I mean, a massive ramp up needs to take place. And after all, we only have 5 years. So the sense of urgency, I think, is imminent. And then just very quickly about the market. So currently, most of the traded CDRs are sort of nature-based, so carbon farming related. And then many companies, as they are anticipating the need to be able to have this carbon removal capacity, so they have already entered into what's called the offtake agreement. So some of the pilot BECS investments, so some of the companies like Microsoft have already bought that capacity for them to be able to use that later on, even if the criteria and the requirements are not fully clear. But this represents a very small fraction of the supply, estimated supply in 2030. But you can see that there's a significant market imbalance. So companies now, as they are gradually starting to pen out these climate transition strategies, they need to set targets for the carbon removals. They start thinking, well, we also need to have a bit of an idea that, what is the portfolio of different carbon removals that we need in order to reach our midterm target for 2030 and then 2050. And in lack of high quality supply, there is a significant market imbalance. It's very interesting times that we live, and I think that as we will see that market liquidity really to start taking off, if you convert that 10 billion tons, and I think it's going to be likely that it's going to be more, because with the current geopolitical developments and shifts in the politics, you can also assume that these emission reductions most likely won't happen as planned. So we need even more of the carbon dioxide removal. And if you take 10 gigatons, 10 billion tons, and apply, say, €50 per ton, so the underlying market value on an annual basis would be, 50 times, what did I say? Make a quick calculation.
I think the forecast for 2030 was $35 billion.
$35 billion, yeah.
Yeah, so which is really huge. And already now, I would say, like what I observed, for example, in France, the carbon price in agriculture projects already jumped from $10 to 20 euro, 200 euro. So this is kind of creating showing the direction, so that most probably the supply, if I understand you right, is smaller than demand.
Yes. So there will be market imbalances, and obviously public players will play their role to try to smoothen that market balance. So, like Evgeny explained, initially also go to the market and make placements to act as a market maker in the first phase. So we certainly will see that.